Hi guys, welcome back to In Her Prime. I'm Elise.
And I'm Dom.
This week we're sitting down with defense lawyer and speaker Jordana Goldlist. From living on the streets as a teenager to building one of Toronto's biggest law firms, Jordana's story is raw, powerful, and radically honest. We talk about redemption, resilience, and what it really means to own your voice, even when it makes people uncomfortable. Welcome, Jordana.
Thank you.
Welcome. How are you?
Great interview. Good. A great intro.
Yeah. Great interview.
Great intro.
How are you? How's your day been?
Hectic.
Yeah.
Very,
busy?
very hectic. Yeah. I haven't had like a downtime.
Where did you come from today? Home? Office?
The office.
Okay.
So worked from home this morning, did court by Zoom, then raced to the office, running around banking, things of that
office
nature.
is downtown Toronto?
In the financial
Okay.
district. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So like
And then
getting out of there, driving.
Yes. And then racing home to change and get ready and whip up over here on the
Hey.
west side of the city. So
Yeah.
it's just been hectic.
I know locations are kind of tough. I came from downtown Toronto and then I went home King City and then came here to the West End. Yeah.
You went from downtown to King
I know.
City?
I was staying at my friend's place and I had my dog with me and I was like, I need to drop my dog off at home. So I went literally all the way Bathurst to King and then here. And I made it for 7 p.m.
Okay.
But I did leave at 4:30. So like I did sit in an hour and a half in traffic.
That's
so
crazy.
just
That would drive
how
me
it is.
crazy.
Yeah.
It was like back to back bumper. My dog was like foaming at the mouth, trying not to yak. I was like, we'll make it.
We'll make it. It's
It's okay,
fine.
we're fine. Yeah.
Okay, we start every episode with our peak and pit of the week. Do you want to go first?
Sure. So it has to just be from this week?
It could just be the past couple weeks, like something that was like a highlight moment, something that stood out to you. Like I saw a friend that I haven't seen in a really long time, checked in with my mom, been super great, or something that like sucked at work or anything. You lost something that you're upset about.
Okay, so I mean, I did check in with a friend that I haven't seen in a long time, but even more triumphant than that, I just picked up a new G-Wagon, which for me was like quite the achievement, pretty phenomenal addition to the small fleet that I'm growing. So
Collect cars.
Yeah,
I'm trying to.
enthusiast?
So this is like my second in the collection of like pretty significant cars, and this one was one. Like I wasn't even, in love with the G-Wagon before I started shopping for one, and then once I drove it, I was like, okay, no, I need this.
Yeah.
I've always
So,
heard
it's
that
pretty
it's bulky until you drive it, and then it just is so smooth.
It drives like a sports
Yeah.
car. So I've always driven sports cars,
Okay.
and then I wanted something a little bit bigger. I don't know. I'm at a point in my life where I just sometimes need to like move things from place to place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my cars have always been like tiny. So I was hesitant, but this one, as big as it is, doesn't have like that SUV feel. It literally drives like a sports car.
Okay.
Did you get like a fun color or just like
sexy
Side
black
basic.
and white?
So I bought it in high gloss black, and then brought it over to Mr. Raptors, who's a good friend and just like the best at wrapping any car there is. And he put like a matte wrap on it with a murder pack, so like it's all blacked out,
Okay.
tinted, and yeah,
Oh.
yeah, the whole 9 yards.
The sexy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's good.
When did you pick it up?
I think it's been like 2 weeks now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Very
So
nice.
that was like the highlight, and I'm still. I think more I drive it, the more I like it. So I'm gonna use that as this week's.
Okay, that is for sure peak. I was
Okay.
thinking that
would be my peak.
That would be my peak.
Fair. Okay,
And then
perfect.
your pet.
I don't know that I've had like anything, bad happen. This week has just been like hectic and overwhelming, I think. I don't know that counts as like a pit. But I am going away for 2 weeks on Sunday, and there's been like a lot of changes within my office. So like new staff coming in, staff leaving, and I find that when things are a little bit turbulent, for me it's stressful because I run like a really, really tight ship. And so whenever there's change, I have to like adapt to it. So it's been like a bit of a stressor, just making sure that like everything in the office is settled, clients are looked after. When new staff comes in, like they're not familiar with
But
the
it's
client.
seamless. You don't
Right.
feel a bump when people come and go.
Correct. So I've just been having to like adjust to that. So I wouldn't say it's a bad thing because it's it's always great to grow and move, but
Change is good.
yeah, but it's stressful to do that like as I'm preparing to be in a different time zone for 2 weeks. So
Were you vacation?
Yes.
Yeah, where are you headed?
Prague.
Nice.
I've never been, but I've heard it's beautiful.
I've never been either.
My parents absolutely love it. They went last year
Okay.
at the end of August for like 3.5 weeks. And they
Oh,
loved
nice.
it. I heard nothing but good things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. Are you just doing Prague?
Just Prague.
Okay.
Yeah.
How did you decide to go there?
So my mom died 4 years ago, and while she was dying, I sat down with her and made a list of all of the places she didn't get to travel to. her birthday was July 16th. So every year on her birthday, I travel to one of the places off her list, and Prague was the next one.
That's
So,
nice.
so every July since she passed, I just check off a place on her list.
Where'd you go last year?
Last year was Portugal, and the year before was
Where in
Barcelona.
Portugal?
So I did Lisbon, rented a car in Lisbon, and drove
Drove
to
to
some,
the Algarve? Or
I did. So I did some of the surroundings, and then drove down to the
Yeah.
Algarve. I went surfing in the Algarve,
Yeah.
and then drove back to Lisbon.
I did that exact same trip 3 years ago for my dad's 50th, and it like to this day, like I preach Portugal.
Yes.
Like I say, if you have the chance to go and you're not, it's like a 6.5 hour flight from here because it's like right at the very beautiful
So,
trip.
I
And
know.
we just drove down.
Did
to
you go to Madeira?
I did.
Oh,
So
see, I
we
didn't
did.
get to Madeira.
We did
I need to
Lisbon.
go back from
We
Madeira.
went up to Porto because the wine's beautiful up there. My
Yes.
parents are really big into wine, and then we drove all the way down to the Algarve, did all the beaches, and then
Nice.
drove right back up.
Yeah, the only one I didn't make it to was Madeira.
Yeah.
That's an island I need to see, and the wine is incredible.
The wine in Portugal is
like something
beautiful.
else.
We did like a full day of day drinking in Lisbon where they just took you to like all the small tavernas and they have the wine somms come out and like explain it and like really give the history about just like the wine and the pairings and yeah, it was a great trip.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed. So that was last year. The year before was Barcelona, and the year before that was Israel.
Okay, amazing.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, so this is next on the list.
Your
awesome.
peak and pit. You go.
My peak, actually on the drive here, Puma emailed me and they want to do collaboration.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, that's
I was
awesome.
excited. Yeah.
That's so great.
Yeah. And then pit, honestly, same as you. Like, it's not really a pit, but I went home for like the whole week last week to visit my parents, and my sister was there with her baby and everything. And it's so nice being with everybody and being all together. And then I had to come back here, and I'm like wanting to go back again. So I'm like homesick.
I feel like you haven't said that.
I've never said that, but I really miss my sister's baby.
Yeah.
Where's home?
My parents live in Windsor.
Okay.
So it's like, it's not that far, but it's just.
It's a trek.
It's a trek. 4.5 hours.
I find when I go home and you're like living in your childhood bedroom, I lose all sense of routine. And I like don't get any work done. And I wake up at 9 and
Breakfast is made. You don't have to do anything.
it's just not, I really thrive off of a routine, and I don't have a routine there. So that's why I had to come back.
Okay.
But
That's your pet?
that's my pet.
Okay, I would say peak. I have like 2 trips coming up in the next 2.5 weeks. I'm doing New York next weekend, just like on a whim to go see a friend, and then LA at the end of the month to go see another friend. I've never been one to like do spontaneous trips, and I have the luxury. I work remote. I'm young. I'm not tied to anything here, so I guess that would be a peak. I'm just really excited. And then pit, I would say work has been extremely overwhelming. I work for a tech startup on the marketing side, and they've tried to transition me more onto the sales side. So I've been doing a lot of things that are like out of my element, like cold calling, cold email, sitting in on discovery calls, prospecting, and I've never done it. So it can be a little bit discouraging being around people that have been doing it for a while, but also it's like, great, I get to learn. So I wouldn't really consider it a pit, but it's just challenging.
Do you like it?
I like it. I really do like the people side of it, and I love going on calls, and I feel super confident, but sometimes people just don't want to receive.
Right.
Like you call someone, and I've been told, I'm like, people are like, fuck off. And I'm like, okay. Yeah. And like you just have like you actually just have to like keep it pushing, and you can't take it personal, but at times it can be a little bit just like my ego's hurt, but I'm like, it's literally just a name of the game. Like everyone cold calls. Like I now on LinkedIn emails, like I get 1 million messages a day, and I don't even care to look. So I'm like, if I'm sending the same email out, like I just need to keep the same energy. But I do like it. It's just I have like my boss will be like, okay, 50 calls today. I'm like, it's a lot. And then like 50 emails, and it's just like there's certain quotas that I have to meet that I guess on the marketing side you don't really experience that.
Fair.
But I'm like, I want to try it all because I work for a startup, so I can dip my toes into so many different facets. So and see what I like.
That's awesome.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it's been great.
I don't think I could ever do that. Like do cold
I didn't
calling
think I
and like
could
call
until-
50 people a day. Like my cup is not filled by talking to
A lot of it
people.
is voicemail, and you just leave a voicemail and you hope to get. But some people call you, and then they're like, "Oh, this is a cold call," and they're like, "Yeah, sorry, not interested." And I'm like, "Okay," and I just like mark the name off.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a lot.
You're like taking down the list.
Yeah, I'm like third espresso down.
True.
Yeah.
Well, getting into you, I want to get into your background because I listened to your TED Talk, and it's honestly fascinating. The start you had and the transition that you had into now being like so well renowned in especially like Toronto and I'm sure other places as well. But how, I guess, not only how did you get into law, but what was the story like leading up to that
For law specifically?
for you? Like, as like, just, I know in high school you had some like tough times. So, what did, I guess, your like high school life look like and then transitioning into law?
High school was interesting. High school, I went to like 5 different high schools. I started high school at a school called Eastdale Collegiate at Broadview and Gerrard. It was like in the core of downtown Toronto, and this is like early 90s. Basically, it had kids feeding into it from 3 different Toronto public housing communities. I grew up in like Thornhill, Richmond Hill, sort of working class families. Day after I turned 14, my mom sent me to live in a group home because I was just a menace. And so I started my high school not only living in a group home with like no connection to my parents, but also going from like comfortable Thornhill. So by no means did my family come from money, but we were comfortable enough to living, to attending school with people from Regent Park, St. Jamestown, and Moss Park primarily. And it was a complete culture shock. Like I didn't understand the background. I didn't understand like socioeconomic status, didn't understand what life was like day to day. Had to learn very quickly and did. Luckily, like I'm easy to adapt. And so I did and made some really phenomenal friends. Like people were incredible. And I think that was almost like, if I had to think back of the start of me taking, someone's character into perspective before passing judgment on them, I think that's where it would be. Because here I was, this like complete outcast, living in group homes, did not fit in, did not grow up with these kids, did not grow up in any of the environments that they were coming from. And yet I had like, a handful of people that basically like took me in and showed me the ropes and was like, listen, this is how things are down here. This is the way things work. And then a year and a half later, so like my second semester of grade 10, I was sent back to live with my parents from the group home. So now I'm going from like urban downtown back up to Thornhill.
Suburban living. Yeah.
Completely. And now I'm looking
But
at
were
all
you
of
still
these
in the same
kids.
school?
No. Like I had to that's when I'm going back to school in Richmond Hill. And now I'm seeing, kids complaining that their parents haven't bought them the car they want or haven't bought them the clothes they want. Meanwhile, like I was going to school with kids that had to commit crime in order to pay rent, in order to make sure that their younger siblings like had food in their mouth. Like it was such a reality check. And so, I go back to Richmond Hill and I'm not fitting in with anyone there either. And it was just like, I don't know what was going on, but, it was harder for me to make friends and fit in when I was back in Richmond Hill than it was for me to be downtown.
The transition from going from your family's home to a group home, how did that impact the relationship with your parents?
My mom cried more than I did.
Yeah.
My mom was devastated having to like put me into a group home, but she was told that was the help that I needed in order to like be well with myself. And it wasn't. I went from, for sure, engaging in self-destructive behaviors. But by the time I came home, I was like full-fledged drug addict. And so I turned to drugs and alcohol while I was in high school and in this group home in order to just like cope with day-to-day life. And so came back home with the same, underlying issues that I had when I left, but definitely, a different and equally destructive way to manage them. And so I fell into like a crowd that was involved in the rave scene, skateboard scene, street scene, and fell very, very quickly into significantly heavier drug use. I think by the time I was like 16 years old, I was smoking crack. So it really, really took me down very, very quickly. By 17 years old, I've been arrested twice, dropped out of school, had been kicked out of one school, got back into a different school, dropped out again. And by like just before my 18th birthday, I think like 3 or 4 months before I turned 18, I was on the streets.
During this whole period, did you have anyone that was like helping you hold it down, that like held space for you to like help navigate, or did you feel like you were just you yourself, an individual, like navigating it all by yourself?
So my mom was doing the best she could to try to like help me, but I didn't know how to accept that help. And I thought I knew better, and I questioned everything. And I had such disdain for all authority that I wasn't in a position to receive that help.
Yeah.
So, I just remember like we were always clashing. We were always fighting. And when I look back, I mean, she was being a completely reasonable, proper, kind, loving mom. But, she was standing in the way of my drug use. And so when I was in active addiction, she was just an obstacle that I needed to sort of get around. But luckily, she never gave up on me. And she was always like my person. And so when I got to a place where I was so sick, I knew that I like needed to clean up. I was fortunate enough to have her to lean on. And so, all of those messages and all of that intervention that for me was like so annoying.
Like, I hate my mom. It was just her being.
I never hated her. I even when I was on the streets, we had a rule back then. People had landlines, and there was a code you could use to get. It was called like leave a message in the back door. So you could dial a code before the phone number, and it would take you to the answering machine of the phone without the phone ringing. So before there was text messages, we had to like maneuver. And so the deal was that every 24 hours, at least, I had to leave her a message letting her know I was still alive. That was our deal. Even if I wasn't going to call into the house, I had to leave a message. And there was never a day that went by that I didn't at least leave her a message to say, I'm still alive, I'll be okay. And that
So
was
when
like
you were
our
on the
deal.
streets, especially as a female, was that scary for you, or were you so like active in addiction that that's not what your focus was?
I mean, there were certainly scary moments. Like it was pretty brutal out there. Like I've been through times that were definitely scary where I didn't think I was going to live to make that next phone call, for sure. But I don't think the fear registered. I don't think it can. It's almost like, you hear stories of people coming through war and the fear doesn't necessarily register until after. I think it sits in me for sure. But at the time, there was very few times that I necessarily felt the fear at the time that I should have felt it. But it existed for sure.
Yeah. So after, I guess you were sort of coming out of this phase, was there a certain person that sort of helped you like regain yourself, or was there like a breaking moment where you were like, okay, I need to, figure out my shit?
So there was a few breaking moments because I didn't stop at the first one. There was lots of moments that, I should have.
Were you relapsed?
That should have signaled like, okay, you should call this quits. But no, I had a near-death drug overdose just before my 19th birthday. That should have been the end. I tried at that point to stop using drugs. I actually went out to Windsor for 3 weeks to a rehab center out there. Came back, was sober for, I don't know, maybe a month or so, started using again. I had set up after I overdosed, I blamed the fact that I was an IV drug user. I thought it was the needles that were almost killing me, and that if I could do drugs without using needles, then I would be A-okay. And so I literally went to rehab to stop using needles. The staff around me thought it was an absolute joke because I was a cocaine and heroin addict. So like that's the problem. The problem wasn't the manner in which I was ingesting. And so when I came back, I said, okay, I'm going to allow myself to do drugs as long as I'm not using needles. I'll be okay. And
like
so,
justifying it.
yeah.
For
So I
yourself.
started smoking crack, and a crack binge led me to heroin, and heroin led me to needles. And so it was about 3 months after I had overdosed, and I was living in what was supposed to be a sober house. It would kick me out very soon after I started back there. But I came home from this binge, and I was walking upstairs to my room, and I got undressed, and there was a full-length mirror. And right before I crawled into bed, I just sort of glanced over at it. And I just saw myself probably for how I really was for the first time in a long time. But I think, when you're sick and when you're in active addiction, you don't really pay attention to what you look like, or you're not really seeing the reality. It's almost like body dysmorphia, but in a way that you think you look healthier than you are. You think
I'm
you're good.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't really see how sick you actually appear. And for some reason, I looked at myself and saw myself for how I was. And I was about 95 pounds. I was gray because I was barely outside. So my skin was just like so pale. And I had track marks. And I was looking at my track marks and it just broke me. I was like, I have given myself permission to do every drug in every single way except one. It's literally like the only thing I didn't want to let myself do was needles. And here I am again. And I just realized that I had absolutely no control over any aspect of my drug use. And I probably never would. And I just thought, if I don't stop, I'm going to die. And even if it's not tomorrow, even if it's not next year, at the end of the day, like by this point, I had just turned 19. But I knew that if I didn't quit, that was it for me. So my mom had contacted a drug counselor that wanted to put me into a rehab for 6 months. I wasn't prepared for it. At the time, I called him the next day. I woke up and I was like, okay, I'm ready. I'll do whatever it takes. Just get me out of this mess. So he did. So I went to rehab for 6 months when I was 19. Completed the program. My mom allowed me to move back home as long as I was going to be productive. I ended up doing a school program that let me do like correspondence courses in the morning and volunteer in the afternoon for credits. So that's how I completed high school. Completed high school at 21 years old and just sort of went from there. I had a relapse while I was in undergrad, but have mostly kept it together, and I just celebrated 21 years sober.
Wow.
That's insane.
So
That's insane.
So I stopped at 25. So, in my 20s, I sort of like had my little dips.
Moments.
But yeah, at 25, I was like, okay, I got to call it here. I'm either going to go into law or not. And if I'm going into law, like I can't be dabbling.
Yeah. So it was that moment, like crawling into bed being 19, that was like the pivot for you.
It was me looking at the mirror and being like, oh,
naked,
it
like,
just broke
this is
me.
not
It
who I
just
wanna
broke
be.
me.
Yeah.
I was just like gross. I was so skinny, so pale. Like my face was sunken in. Eyes were just like dark. I hadn't slept at that point in like 3 or 4 days. I hadn't eaten in 3 or 4 days. Like it's just horrible. Like I was seeing myself for what I really was. And I knew that if I didn't stop, this was the way I was going to die.
Was addiction in your family? Like,
No.
why do you think as such a young kid that you decided to go that route? Was it peer pressure? Was it, influence from high school?
Not at all. So I came from a broken home in a time when there wasn't a lot of broken homes. Right now, it's like your parents are divorced, everybody's parents are divorced, right? They join the club. But, I'm 46. So when I was 5 and my parents divorced, my dad left when I was 2. My parents finalized their divorce when I was 5, but it was a miserable divorce. It was like awful. I always say that I was the rope in their tug of war, and I was pulled back and forth. I'm an only child. I didn't have anyone that was talking to me, and whatever feelings I had with, my dad leaving, my mom got sick, my stepfather had been arrested. Like there was just so much sort of adult problems that were happening in my life from the ages of like 5 to 10 that nobody wanted to talk about. Like nobody wanted to sit me down and ask me how I was feeling and,
like make you feel like a kid.
Anything. There was no room for me to feel like a kid. I knew all of these things were happening, but nobody wanted to work through like how to process them. So I just like stuffed them down and I just like let them, I guess, brew because I didn't know what else to do. And I came from a family where like nobody wanted to talk about this with outside help either. So, there was no therapist. There was no one in the extended family that was sitting me down to say like, hey, how you managing with all this? What are you doing? How do you feel?
Like, can I help? Like,
Nothing. And so I just ignored all those feelings. And then they exploded. When I was 10 years old, I just started acting out. By the time I was 12, I started cutting myself. I started drinking because I saw other people drinking and I liked the way alcohol made me feel. At 13, I was finally taken to a psychiatrist and her answer was to medicate. So at 13 years old, I was prescribed Prozac. I was on Ativan, which no 13-year-old should ever be on.
Ativan is crazy.
And I was on sleeping pills.
Yeah.
So then I was like, okay. And the doctor was like, you just take half an Ativan when you don't feel good, when you feel like out of control. So I was like, what happens if I take a whole one? So then I took a whole one. And I was like, what happens if I take 1.5? And so I just started experimenting with how like these drugs made me feel. And then I mixed alcohol in. And so then it was like a half an Ativan with like a couple of shots of tequila. And I realized that with these substances, I could control how I felt. I didn't need to process feelings. I didn't need to worry about them.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the start of my addiction. It had nothing to do with friends, had nothing to do with peer pressure. I wasn't even in high school yet. You know, so many people think that like, oh, you went to this school downtown with the kids
And
from
they were
Regent
like
Park.
forcing you
and
to do it.
and not
yeah.
at all. Like the friends that I had at Eastdale, you know, weren't really using drugs. If they were smoking weed here and there. I was the one seeking it out from like the older kids. I was the one that was like hanging out in the alleys and the pool halls just to like try to find people that I can use drugs with. So for me, it was always a way to control emotion. It's what it was always about.
So how did you decide that you wanted to go to law school? After all of this happens, I feel like that is rare, that you decide
Like I
to,
want
like,
more.
I want
better for
I want
myself.
better, but not only do I want better, I want to go and be like a full-blown like professional lawyer.
So it started when I was a kid. So my stepdad got charged. He hired one of the city's like top lawyers to defend him. I was young. I was like 7, 8 years old. I didn't know what a lawyer did. I was like, oh, lawyer. But every time the lawyer called, it was like, okay, guys, be quiet. The lawyer's on the phone. It's the lawyer. It's the lawyer. And the lawyer was like, God. I was like, who is this person? I don't know what they do, but I want that. I want to call someone's house. I want everyone to be quiet. And I want to tell people I want to see them and they change their whole day. Like, I want to have that level of importance. And then, you know, when you beat the case, for years and years to come, my family, you know, held him in such high esteem for, you know, basically offering vindication to my family. And then I wanted that. You know, I wanted to do something so meaningful for people that they have this sort of admiration and appreciation for a long time. Like I wanted to have that kind of effect. Then, of course, I had the teenage life that I've just described and thought there's no way. And so I knew when I sobered up that I just needed to finish high school. So finish high school. As I was finishing high school, I was like, okay, I need to do something more to educate myself because at the end of the day, I want to drive nice cars and I'm not going to do it with just a high school education. So I applied to university. I got in. I got an entrance scholarship. And in university, it was more like I just wanted to figure out what I would enjoy so that I kept doing it. You know, the reality is if I don't enjoy what I'm doing, I'm not going to do it and I'm not going to do well. So my last year of undergrad, I was studying philosophy. I applied to do my master's at the University of Guelph. And it was just like, if I don't apply to law school now, I'll never know. At least if I apply and get my rejections, I'll know I tried.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did. And that's really been like a theme for me in life. It's like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do something, but I'll try and hope for the best. And luckily, of course, I had Osgoode Hall Law School, which was my top pick, except me. And then I needed to get sober because I was in the throes of a
So
really
at this
bad
point,
relapse.
You weren't sober yet, pre-law school.
So I stopped at 19. I was completely sober for 2 years. 21 years old, I start university, and everybody's like,
well, I was just going to
drinking.
say, like, I went to Laurier,
Right.
and it's exposed. Like, I would literally say this all the time to my parents and just being so transparent. I was almost shocked as an undergrad student, like first, second, and third year before COVID, when people weren't doing it. Because it's so accessible and it's so easy to get. And the girl next door sells it and this person does it. And party favors are all, like, they're just there that if someone doesn't do it or try it, it's not that you vindicate them, but you're like, why? Like it was just a thing. So
it was like sort of my experience.
Yeah,
So
like,
I have
people-
never dabbled in anything. And you would almost think that like that would be the norm and like people doing whatever is like the outsider. It was the reverse. I think I was the only person I knew that wasn't regularly dabbling in something on like a weekend or
an event,
that they're studying for an
yeah.
exam and they need to stay up or like just there's so many different things that are like pushed on you in university. And I don't think that's ever going to change. I think that's just always the way it will be. And it's sort of like up to you to decide, do I want to experiment or do I want to do my thing?
But
or
even like now in our 20s,
yeah,
like we go out and it's there.
It's the norm.
Everywhere you look, people that you don't think do it are doing it. Like Wednesday night or Thursday after work hits and you're like, you do that and like you see them like 9 to 5 and they're polished and they're put together and they work hard, and then you see them on a weekend and it's just become the norm. So I can imagine, like, was that a challenge being exposed, or I guess knowing that it's accessible, being 21 going into university?
So it's interesting because when I stopped doing drugs at 19, I cut everyone off. I changed my phone number. I disappeared. Like, people had no idea. Some people thought I died. Some people thought I went to jail. Like, people had no idea what happened to me. And I was totally fine with that. Like, I didn't care.
Extreme.
Totally. And it was like,
really change your life.
yeah. And I didn't feel like I needed an explanation to my crack dealer. Like, I just didn't need to explain where I went. It's none of your business. And yeah, I just didn't want anyone to be able to find me. So I cut everyone off and then started from scratch. And I really wasn't trying to make friends. Knew that I was older than everyone else when I was trying to finish high school. I knew I was going to be older than most of the people that I was going to be starting university with. And I wasn't really concerned. But yes, it's always been like a party environment. So people are out drinking, people are out partying.
Did you ever explain your background to anyone? Like,
no.
Did that ever?
No, I didn't. I made it through first year without relapsing. I think I started smoking weed again while I was in my first year of university. And then in second year of university, I ended up in one of my favorite classes. It was the economics of law and policy. And I met a woman who would end up being like my best friend throughout all of undergrad. And we started talking. And I think like our second or third conversation, she like let it slip that she had been out smoking opium. And when I was using at the tail end of my use, I loved opium. And I was like, wait, what? You do opium? Because it's not obviously the norm. It's not something that's common. It's actually like, at least back then, it was very hard to find. I don't know how it is today. But, and she was like, and she was startled because now she thought I was judging her poorly.
You're like both looking at each other.
And
like,
I was like, wait a second.
Yeah, what the hell's going on?
And so we bonded over like this mutual love of opium of all things. And we made plans to get together. And then I found out that, she was doing a lot of GHB. She was doing MDMA. She was using all sorts of drugs. And I was like, you know what, maybe, if she can do it and still be great at school and still live at home and still work, like she had her shit together.
Like
and that was new for me, right? As I was used to like street level addicts where we had nothing. Everybody around us was like high school dropouts. Everyone was just like committing crime to like pay for drugs. So this idea of people who could, be functional drug addicts or users was really new. And so I started dabbling again. I started partying again. I was really cautious about it. I told her from the start, I don't do cocaine. I don't want any cocaine. That to me was like my biggest fear because that was, my
like a gateway into.
That was my love. I'm one of those lab rats that I will die before I stop using if there's a pile in front of me. So I said, no, I don't use. And for the longest time, she thought I was scared to try. And so she kept
like, I've been
trying to reassure me. She's like, it's okay. You just do a little. It's fine. I'm like, no, it's okay. Because I didn't want her to know the truth of how bad I got, right? Because even in like the club scene, like when you're a street level addict, like that's bottom of the barrel. And so I didn't want anyone to know that side of my history.
And then a lot of people look at it as just like, it's like fun, like you just do it like once or twice and like that's it. And I think to expose that level of yourself can be, or could have been, I don't know, fear of embarrassment or what you would have think. Like
I was like humiliated by it. It wasn't something that I was prepared to talk about openly. She also was trying to get into law school. She was working in a law firm at the time. And I just didn't want anyone to know that about me. And then one day we were out and she was really trying to pressure me. And she was like, listen, you're going to feel so much better. I think we were like coming down off of like MDMA or something. And finally I was like, listen, I smoke crack. I was like a really, really bad drug addict. I can't dabble in this. Like, you need to keep this away from me. And then it was this like, once it made sense to her, she became so protective. So we would be out and someone would offer me blow and she would be like, no, she doesn't do it. Don't touch it. No. And she was just like this guardian that would not allow me to use. And then we had this agreement where we went out. If she wanted to use blow, we would go our separate ways. And, I wouldn't question where she was when I couldn't find her. And she wouldn't tell me. And we just had this like arrangement. And that was like second year university. Same with third. And I managed to like still maintain great grades. I was still like a straight A+ student. I was working 2 part-time jobs. I was living at home. Like I really was holding it all together in a way that I thought I could manage until I couldn't. And so, fourth year undergrad, I went away with some friends to the Dominican Republic. I knew they were using cocaine, and I asked them, please, like, not to bring. I just needed like a vacation. I actually just wanted to clear my head, and they did not listen. And so we showed up there, and they had smuggled like 2 ounces of blow for the week, and we just went. It was every day, all day, and I came back like basically a drug addict again, and was using all the time for the next 4 months. And in the middle of that 4 months, I got accepted into Osgood, and I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do right now. Like, I am in no condition to do law or law school or be around, other potential lawyers. But this was my one opportunity. So I had to make a decision. June 27th, I woke up and was like, I'm done with this. I'm not doing this anymore.
And that was it.
That was it.
And then you became a lawyer. You did it.
Did you like feel like you had to go back to rehab or have a counselor support you, or like this was just full you as an individual like took control of the situation?
Yeah. So I was on a 3-day binge. At the end of the 3 days, I got up from a table full of blow, and it wasn't getting me high anymore because I had like really high tolerance. And I went downstairs. We were at a friend's house, and I went into the fridge and was like pulling the ingredients I needed to like cook my own crack. And I stopped, and I just had this like epiphany of what life was like for me as an 18-year-old addict. And all of a sudden, I just like saw basically my law and my entire future explode. And I put everything back in the fridge, and I walked up to my friends and I said, I'm done. And everybody looked at me and was like, you're done what? And I was like, I'm done. Done all of this. I'm done. And they laughed at me. They were like, yeah, okay, see ya. See you in an hour. Let us know how that goes. And I went to bed, and I eventually fell asleep. Took me hours and hours, but I just put in my head, like, you're done. You can't keep doing this. You need to give law a chance. By that time, I had already accepted Osgood's offer. Like, I was planning. My family was so proud of me. My mom was ecstatic. My mom was telling the whole world, like, my daughter's going to Osgood. I can't believe this. Like, I just couldn't blow it. And that was it. I just had this moment where I was like, if I stay on this path, that's it. I'm ruining everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was it. And I got up the next day and was like, I'm really done. So just pulled all the lessons. And then I didn't want to tell my parents. I didn't want to tell my family. I didn't want to like, go back to rehab. I didn't know how to reach out to a counselor. Like, I was just so sort of ashamed, really, that I had allowed myself to go back to that place, because it had been 5 years at that point.
And especially because everyone is like so proud of you at that point. I feel like it's like a lot of like internal guilt. Once you became like a lawyer, like once you finished law school and you did all of that, was it hard entering like a very male dominated space as a female, or did you feel like that you tuned out the noise and you just like kept on, building a career? Because especially as a defense lawyer, I feel like there's very few female defense lawyers, which a lot of people could look at as like that being really intimidating and like kind of like a con. But I feel like you could also look at it as that's an opportunity for me to grow like and really high.
So like when I think about who I look up to or who I think is doing better than me in the criminal defense bar, it's all women. It's actually a lot of women. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. There's a lot of females. Now, there's a lot of men too, but I think that some of the, the top defense lawyers in the city are women and have done like a really incredible job. I think that's new. So I don't think like the public perception has caught on. So I'm not surprised that it seems male dominated. I never felt any ways about it. And I don't know if that's because like I was a tomboy growing up. I was always friends with guys. I never felt like I had to prove anything. Yeah. I also had like so many amazing males that looked after me, when I was on the streets, when I was coming out of the streets. Like, I've just been blessed to I've had shitty guys in my life, but I've also had some really phenomenal men in my life. And fortunately, throughout my career, I've had some really incredible male bosses that have always taught me and nurtured me. I never felt like belittled. I never felt intimidated. I never felt disrespected. Like I didn't have that, and now I know that there's a lot of young female lawyers who do feel like they're at a disadvantage being women. That was never my experience. So I started off as a civil litigator. All 3 of the principals that I worked for were men. All of them were incredible teachers and really taught me how to be lawyers. And then when I switched to criminal law, my boss was a guy who literally taught me everything and had, as long as I had an intelligent question, he had the time to answer it. So I was very fortunate in that regard. And then when I went on my own after year 5, I'm in a law chambers with my cousin, who's a female lawyer and has an almost identical practice that I do. And so we sort of like grew together, but have always kept our practices separately. So, my greatest mentors have been females or males who have always made me feel welcome in the profession.
Is there a specific like clientele that you tend to focus on?
Yeah, I street crime only. So it's sort of narrowed over the years, but it's always been like with a focus to street crime. So drug trafficking, firearms offenses, robberies, homicide, serious violence, carjackings, car theft, home invasion, things of that nature.
At what point did you openly decide to talk about your background? Because obviously, like throughout university, you wanted to keep that part of yourself hidden and really just show up as who you were in that moment. Obviously, now like you talk about it on podcasts, and I'm sure it's a part of who you are now. Like, when did you decide that you didn't want to like hide that, and you were like, "This is me. Like, I'm owning all of those mistakes, the ups and downs, the drug use." Like, when did that pivot? Because I feel like a lot of people will have things that happen in childhood, or they're like, I don't want to associate myself with that. Like, I don't want anyone to know who I was, the mistakes, or what. Like, when did that, you were like, no, I'm going to just talk about it?
Such a good question.
Yeah.
Actually, there's I was listening to a podcast recently, Charlize Theron. She's like an actress, but when she was a kid, her mom killed her father because of like domestic abuse. And she like hasn't spoken about it for years, and like only recently she's like owned it and decided to talk about it, because I feel like a lot of people like bury these things down, and it's not like a proud moment, but it should be a proud moment because you overcame it and you did something with it, like something for the good.
Yeah, that's intense.
Yeah.
So interesting. I didn't know that about her.
Yeah.
Okay. So I promised myself in law school that if I could figure out how to be successful as a lawyer, I would open up about my history. I was in law school. I had nobody to look out for. I did not think that I could be successful. I didn't think someone with my history could ever make it. I was
But
like,
you were there.
full of doubt.
You're like in law school.
I was in law school, but I didn't know if I was going to be a successful
so much
lawyer.
more
That
goes
so I was
with
going to
it.
graduate with a law degree. Was anyone going to trust me? Was any judge going to listen to me? Was I ever going to be able to like argue? Was I going to be able to like carry myself like a lawyer? I was full of doubt. And then one day I was sitting in a class and teacher posed a question, prof posed a question, and my classmates were answering the question, and they were so distant from the clients that they were talking about. It was almost like they were talking about an object.
Okay.
Yeah, they had no appreciation for like, there was no situational awareness whatsoever. And I was like, I understood.
Do I chime in? Yeah.
Right. And I understood because I had been the role of the client. Like, I understood where they were coming from. And then I had all of these questions that would have helped situate the legal problem with the person. But it was so disconnected in all of their minds because they could never picture themselves in that same situation. And I was like, there's just such a disconnect here. And there was a part of me that just wanted to stand up and be like, let me explain this to you. And so, yeah, I was like, I'm going to use my history in a positive way one day. And one day I want to tell people what I'm all about if I can be successful, because I want to be an example. I want to be the example that I didn't have. And so that was my promise to myself. But I didn't know when it was going to be. I was like, not now.
So not throughout law school.
No,
like
oh my God. I didn't even want to make friends with people. I didn't want to talk to people.
Okay.
I didn't want to network with people. I didn't want to go out drinking with people because obviously when we drink, we're far more honest and less guarded. And I wanted my guard. So I didn't want to drink with anyone.
So what did you do in social settings though? Like, did you talk about just the present?
Oh yeah, very superficial.
Okay.
It was like the bane of my existence because I hate superficial
that girl
chatter.
has no personality, but you're
Probably.
like little, but like because you weren't like allowing yourself to
Yes.
to go there.
Yes.
And even like when you applied for law school, like obviously law, like were they aware of your background, like on the
No,
it never came up?
I don't
Like
think so. I
you going
think,
to rehab, like being on record, was that never
yeah, I
it
don't
never
think so.
affected like application or anything of
No,
that?
no.
Okay.
Like, I was charged as a youth. So all
So
my
you're
convictions were as a youth. I never got convicted of anything as an adult. So it
okay.
didn't follow me into adulthood. And so even when I finished law school and had to apply to the Law Society, they want to know what your background is. I did not have to declare my previous
Okay.
charges because they were only convictions as a youth and they were both discharges. So I came out clean, which is amazing.
Okay.
So yeah, I didn't want anyone to know anything.
Okay.
I kept things like super quiet.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. I
It's
was like
literally
frightened of
double
anyone to
life.
know.
Like
Completely.
you are people. I'm
Completely.
assuming you present yourself at law school, and you're obviously holding yourself to like the highest standard. But like
I wouldn't even wear t-shirts and like I
all the
was
tattoos.
Well, this arm wasn't tattooed at all. This arm was tattooed up to where up to here.
Yeah.
And not the rest. This I've since done. But I was so scared of people knowing that I was tattooed was like this huge thing.
And what, just judgment?
Yeah.
Not take you seriously?
Yeah.
And
I didn't want anyone to ask me what the meaning of them was. I didn't want to have to explain my life. I didn't want to have to explain myself to anybody. I was just like paranoid. I was like, I don't want anyone to know who I really am or what I'm really about.
So making friends for law school, like how did that, was that even
I think it was
there for
superficial.
you?
I had, 2 people that I connected with that I opened up a little bit with, but it was again like very, very superficial.
Friends outside of law school that knew your background, that like a support system, like someone?
Yeah, I had a partner at the time who really helped hold me down throughout those first few years. But no, my friends were still partying. My friends were all still drug addicts.
So you were still like, I wanted to ask as well, like all the people that you were friends with, even like the group of people that were with you when you had that like aha moment before you went to law school.
No. So
You
that
cut-
was
you
like
cut
complete
ties?
separation.
Okay, so you
so
cut
everyone I was
ties.
on the street with, like when I cleaned up, when I went to that 6-month rehab program, I
But
literally.
even the people at Guelph that were still partying, were you?
I didn't get to Guelph. I applied to do my master Guelph
okay,
in. So
but undergrad, I mean, sorry.
So those people were still partying. So
Okay.
everyone on the streets, I left on the streets and I cleaned up. I had to start new again when I
Mm-hmm.
finished high school. I went to that alternative program and then I went to an alternative school to do my last year of high school. Again, I think I made friends with one person who I kept in touch with during my first year of undergrad. In undergrad, made a whole new set of friends, many of whom I'm still friends with today. But when I went into law school, they were still partying.
Okay.
And I didn't
So
want
just
to
the
tempt
trajectory
myself.
was different. Of what you guys were
Completely.
different.
And they
Yeah.
were partying in a way that like they could handle. They still lived at home and they worked and they were normal humans.
Yeah.
They didn't take it to the levels that I did. And then those who were really bad and really deep into it, they didn't want to hang out with me and I didn't want to hang out with them. I was like, I don't want to be tempted to do drugs. And they were like, I don't want to not do drugs. So I'm just going to not
Like
be
we
friends
just don't
with you.
mesh.
They were just didn't
Yeah.
meet anymore. So yeah, I just focused. I was just law school. At the time I was bodybuilding. So it was like law school, gym, partner, and home with my parents who were like more than happy to see that I was actually like focused in doing law. And that was it. I kept my head down for like 3 years. I made a couple of friends in law school. One of whom I'm, still friends with. He has his own firm. I still send him work. He sends me work, from time to time. And that was it. I really didn't build relations with many people in law school. There was a couple of people that I connected with that were still like social media friends, but we don't actually see each other.
They're like meaningful.
So
Yeah, it's like that said, it's funny because if one of us calls the other and needs something, we're there.
Yeah.
But like there's no real, ongoing connection.
Yeah.
So over the years, has your, I guess, like personal opinion changed on the justice system? Like going through it yourself, I guess, a little bit as a teen, and then being on the opposite end where you're like fully vouching and trying to help kind of people that maybe were in a similar situation to you or obviously a more extreme situation. How has your view changed over time?
I used to think that the justice system was broken. I used to think that if I could just get in there and explain to people how it is, like people aren't just robbing people for the sake of robbing people. A lot of people are robbing people because either they're, they're suffering financially or they're drug addicts or they're mentally ill. I thought that before I got deep into the justice system, I thought that this was like a novel idea and people just didn't understand
Like
it.
POV from the
Yeah.
other side.
And I was like, I'm just going to teach them and then we're going to fix it. Right. And then it's going to be better. And then it's going to be more fair. And then we're going to actually like help people and in turn help society. Right. Because if we help a drug addict get clean, then that drug addict is now not like robbing people and terrorizing communities. So, you know, there was this like sort of domino effect where if you help the person, you help the community. And I thought that the justice system was broken because there was a disconnect between what they do and what they understood. And the more I'm in the justice system, and I quickly realized the system is functioning exactly how it was designed to function. It's not broken. Everybody knows that this is the way it is. And the government chooses to run an economy through the justice system. And as a result, we don't have fixes for the problems that we all know exist.
So with even I'll compare it to the stuff that's happening in the States right now with all of like the riots in LA and everybody being detained or deported, like how does that, I guess, like alter your view of the justice system or does it not? Did you expect that, you know, I've worked in the justice system for this long. I know that this is how they operate. It's like for economical purposes, all of these things.
Well, I think what's happening in the US right now with like the riots and the deportations are different than what's happening right now in our criminal justice system. I don't know that I would make that comparison. I think there's, you know, travesty on both sides. I understand. I mean, this is what Trump campaigned for. This is what people
wanted
elected him
Yeah.
to do. So he's doing what he said he was going to do. Shouldn't be a surprise that he's deporting people. I think it's surprising that he's sending, you know, Venezuelans to El Salvador. I don't know that anyone was expecting that move. So, you know, but what's happening here, it's different. We have a system that really, I think, encourages recidivism. And I didn't appreciate that before I was deep in the system. I thought that, you know, drug addicts and drug dealers and, you know, people that are carrying guns, they're not understood. And I thought I could help bridge the gap and be a voice. And the more time I spend in the system and the more time I spend speaking to crowns and the more time I spend speaking to judges, like everybody knows what the problem is. Everybody knows we could fix it. You know, we just have to change the way that we actually fund the different programs. And the justice system has been hearing for years about the need to, you know, improve community services that are available in community housing in order to prevent people from community housing ending up as victims of the justice system. But we're not doing it.
Do you think it starts at the beginning?
100%.
Yeah.
You know, I say it all the time. It costs approximately, depending on which jail, but it costs approximately $100,000 to house an inmate in a federal institution. And so a federal institution is for anyone who's been convicted of a crime and sentenced to over 2 years. So anything over 2 years, they go into a federal system. If you took that same $100,000 that you would spend incarcerate somebody and put it to the front end of their life from like 0 to 12 and give them a proper education, after school programs, counseling, addressing childhood trauma, addressing generational trauma, addressing, you know, substance abuse in the family, like all of these underlying issues that everybody knows is what feeds into criminality for most people who enter the justice system, you would have far less people entering the justice system. But we don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
We don't give people what they need in order to make different or better decisions.
And it's crazy because that like could tie into your upbringing. Like if someone would have just acknowledged what you were experiencing at the age of 13, like mixing and just doing all of that, like maybe it wouldn't have led you to where you were. Like,
but it had to be earlier, right?
Yeah.
By the time I was getting
help, by the time you were 13, like you
was,
were deep in it.
That
but
was
I think
it.
At the age of 7, when through the
100%.
trenches of your parents' divorce, like if someone really pulled you out of that situation where it's like, no, like let's get her into therapy and help her cope with this.
Yeah.
It maybe, who knows, but you probably wouldn't have ended up where you were at 19 years old.
Yeah, I remember being like 9 years old and getting in trouble because I would daydream and couldn't pay attention in class. Like I just had no patience for anything the teacher was saying. And instead of someone like pulling me aside and like sitting me down and saying, look, let's figure this out. You know, why are you not focusing? Because you get good grades and you're smart, but there's something going on here that you're, you know, acting out and misbehaving. Instead, they forced me to stand in front of a fucking whiteboard and write, I will not daydream in class over and over again. I had to write lines. How did that help? I just daydreamed as I was writing my lines. Like, it was stupid.
Yeah.
So no, like, we don't get to the root cause of what, you know, feeds into all of these issues. And if you're not getting to the root cause, you're not going to fix the issues.
Do you
It's so
advocate
simple.
for that a lot in your professional life? Like, as much as you can. Like, obviously one individual can't go and change.
So I talk about it often in hopes that, like, someone will hear and want to make a difference. But the reality is it needs to be a change that happens at the policy level.
Yeah.
You know, individual judges have to sentence people in accordance with what the precedent is. And right now, you know, there's no space. There's the waiting list to get into detox is, you know, weeks long, if not months long. The waiting list to get into rehab is like months, if not years long. So for people who want to clean up, there's no space for them to clean up. And right now in Toronto, it's like, I think detox has like a 2-week maximum, but most rehabs need you to be sober for 3 weeks in order for you to even start the program. So you take someone who's homeless and has nowhere to go, you send them to detox for 2 weeks, they come out clean. What are they supposed to do for a week? They're going to end up back on the street. And if you're on the street, you're using drugs. Like, the system doesn't, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So no, my perception of the system has definitely changed over the years. I have to be careful and know my place with people. I am not a life coach. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a
lawyer.
worker. I'm there to defend them in their case. And, you know, I hope that they make better choices for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That's all I do. And, you know, whatever that means, if they decide to not deal drugs again because this was a horrible situation and they lost all of their money and they lost their freedom and it's not what they want, great. If they just figure out how to be a better drug dealer and not get caught, power to you. Like, I'm not there to tell someone to stop dealing drugs. I'm not there to tell someone to stop carrying a gun. Like, I don't walk in their shoes. But we as a society have to question why a 14-year-old feels so unsafe in the world that they think they should walk around with a gun in their waistband. That's the real question for me. Everyone wants to know why the kid's carrying a gun. Why aren't we asking why is society structured in such a way that he feels like he needs to?
Oh, I like never thought about it like that.
Most people don't.
Yeah, I don't.
But until we do, it's not going to change. It's just going to get worse.
Yeah. One last thing I wanted to touch on. Obviously, you have a social media presence. When did that happen? Like, did you ever think that that was something that was going to unravel for you? Like, obviously you're very comfortable being online and you have an audience based off of your background and with your podcast as well, like creating a platform for people to talk about their backgrounds. When did that occur for you? Like, did you resent it? Did you just let it flow naturally? Did you think like, no, I just want to keep my professional side like in the court, not bring it online? Like, what was that for you?
So I was like last of my friends to join Facebook. I do not like pictures. I do not take selfies. Like, there's just not my thing. I joined Facebook because I kept missing parties. And people were like, well, I sent you the invite. I'm like, but I don't have Facebook and I don't check my invites.
Yeah.
So, you know, back in the day, that was the only way that you got invited to places was through Facebook. And so I needed to open up a Facebook account. So I did. Like I told you, I promised myself in law school that if I could figure out how to be successful, I would be open about my history. I think it was like 2016. 2016, I had my own practice for a year. So I started practicing criminal law in 2010. I was with a firm for 5 years, and then I opened up my own practice. And about a year after opening up my own practice, there was a push by the government to try to change the definition of a disability under the Ontario Disability Support Program to include drug addiction. And my head exploded because I don't think it's a disability. I think a disability is something that you wake up one day and you cannot change. Someone is, you know, paralyzed. They can't will themselves to walk. Mm-hmm. And addiction is something that with the right willpower and the right supports, you can change. So I don't think it's a disability, and I don't think the taxpayer money should be going to someone just because they're a drug addict. Like, I was just vehemently opposed to the entire notion. And so at the time, I was working with a PR company that was doing articles for me. We would have like a phone call, and they would spread an article, and I would share that on LinkedIn. And that was sort of my way of like expressing myself. And so I called and I said, we have to do a story. And during my interview, I said, I am an ex-junkie. And the interviewer was like, whoa, what did you just say? And I was like, I want it known that I am giving this perspective as someone who has struggled with addiction since I was 13 years old.
Was that your first time
Yes.
realizing it?
Yes.
Were you prepared to do that?
No, I was like, but I have to do this because I didn't want to be coming across as someone,
like
as
arrogant?
just a lawyer who doesn't think that drug addiction is a disability. That wasn't the angle. And it wasn't the angle. I wasn't wearing my lawyer hat when I was like, this is wrong. It was like, no, I'm an addict. I worked really hard to overcome my addiction, but like my stepfather's in a wheelchair. He's never going to be able to just like wake up one morning and say, fuck it, I'm going to walk today. Whereas I got up one morning and said, I am never going to do cocaine again. And I've never done cocaine again. So, so that was the first time, that article was the first time that I put myself out there and admitted to my history. And I was scared to death. I thought, this is the end of my career. I'm going to be honest about who I am, and no one's ever going to hire me again. And a judge is never going to trust what I have to say again. And the Crown's never going to want to talk to me. And it had the opposite effect. People really resonated with it. People reached out and were like, wow, thank you for sharing. I appreciate it. And that was
From
sort of
fellow lawyers, clients,
lawyers, clients, people around me. And I was like, oh, you know what? I don't know. I feel safe to talk about this. And so then I started sharing a little bit more, and then Instagram came out, and I was working with a PR company that was like, you need to be on Instagram. Like, you need to be on this platform. And I was like, oh, I don't know. Anyways, that's how Instagram started. It started for me to like start sharing some of my ideas. And then Who Judges the Judge started on Twitter. So I started off on Twitter and I started sharing news articles about lawyers, judges, police, whomever in the justice system that was misbehaving. So like corrupt cops, corrupt judges, whatever the case may be. And I would post the article just with the hashtag Who Judges the Judge. And it caught traction. And then people started knowing me by that. And then it sort of grew. And I realized like this is such a great vehicle to advertise not only what I do, but what I'm about. And then it just sort of spiraled from there. My TED Talk in 2018 really catapulted, my own visibility. And I just realized it's a great vehicle to share information with people and give people value.
Mm-hmm. So you see social media more as like a tool to like.
Totally.
Yeah. For
totally.
Sure.
So I'm not necessarily like, I don't know that I'm comfortable with it. I am now because I don't really think about it going out, into the world the way that it does. I know that it does, and I want the message to carry. But I'm the last one in the room to pull out a phone and take photos. Ever. It's like
it's not
crazy.
who you are.
No.
If
I didn't have like a PR company, social media management, a partner who's a photographer, like if I didn't have these resources around me, there would be no pictures of me. There would be no video.
Like nothing's going out
It's
ever.
literally, but I know how important it is, and I know what I want to accomplish, and I know that I have just such a unique perspective on the world that it's important to share. And for me, I think that, we're inundated with so much useless information that to provide something meaningful to people and give them something to truly think about and discuss amongst themselves, whether they agree with me or not, I think is really important today.
Yeah, no, that's huge because you're adding value and you're like genuinely talking about backstory that maybe not other peers of yours come from. So it's cool. Yeah, no, I think it's dope.
That's the whole point of it. And the number of like law students I have that reach out to me, or, even students in university that are struggling and they're like, holy shit, like if you can do it, I can do it. And that's what I wanted, right? I wanted people to feel what I didn't have when I was in law school. And just the belief that like you can do it, because I'm not special. It's not anything. Like I'm saying, like there was nothing unique. I didn't get handed anything. I don't come from a family of lawyers. I don't come from money. I don't come from any of that. Like I literally built myself up out of nothing. And I think, to know that someone can do that means that anyone can do that.
I wanted to thank you so much for taking the time today out of your busy workday and coming and just chatting with the two of us. Obviously, we both knew your history before sitting here, but like hearing you talk, literally go from 0 to 100 of like where you built yourself, I think is extremely fascinating. And I think it takes a certain level of discipline and motivation to like pull yourself out of like the trenches and get to where you are right now. So I just want to say thank you from the both of us. Like this has been great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so
No,
much.
this
Thanks
is
for
great.
having me.
Where can people find you online?
Well, anywhere now. So Instagram, TikTok, although TikTok page is managed. If you want to reach me directly, it's through Instagram, LinkedIn. All of my resources are on my website. So jhgcriminallaw.com or just Jordana Goldlist on every social media platform. And then the podcast is Who Judges the Judge, which is on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube.
Okay, well, thank you so much for chatting with us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. It's awesome.